So I've been in post-secondary education for almost 3 years now, and I've had to guide myself throughout the entire thing in terms of self-discipline and work ethic, and it's been a little bit challenging. And through the years, I've found these little loopholes or tricks, if you will, to just make the whole process easier. So I've compiled the main ones that I think are really significant into this one video, and I just really wanted to share it with you guys because I just really would have loved for this video to have existed back when I started my university journey, and I hope it can help you. So let's get right into it. So, when you enter university, it's obviously a very big step, and obviously tools are given to you by professors, by the university itself, friends and family, and tools are fantastic. Tools are great, but the important thing that students often forget is how to use them properly. And that is something I definitely realized in the past couple of years. I was like, this is a great trick, but we're not doing it very efficiently. Using the tools correctly will make all of the difference in terms of efficiency and effectiveness of your studies, which is crucial because in that time that you're spending with that tool, it could just be a lot more efficient if done properly instead of spending more time. You know, we're trying to be time efficient here. So I recently read this book by the lovely Jade, who wrote The Only Study Guide You'll Ever Need. And I 10 out of 10 recommend this book. It was absolutely true to its title. I loved all the tricks that it had mentioned in there, and it had like a lot of things that I already did, so I was happy to know that I was doing something right. It just really has really great information and examples on how you can better accommodate different study tools and different study techniques. And I'm going to share a specific one today that had really caught my eye when I was reading the book. The main one that caught my eye was the SAD study technique. I know, fantastic name, makes me really happy. And basically the abbreviation for the SAD study technique is spaced repetition, active recall, association, and desired difficulty. These are crucial to better studying and better understanding how like the brain kind of functions and just how to make things more efficient. So let's start off with the first one, spaced repetition. Consistency in your studies is key to having proper memory and just having like a better base and understanding of your material. And basically having that consistency will assure the freshness of the information in your brain. So like think of it as a graph, right? The Y is going to be your memory and then the X the amount of time. If you continue to have that fresh mindset of information because of the consistency in your studying, it's just going to be all the more efficient. Instead of like studying it once, knowing it, and then forgetting it, and then having to start again from zero over and over again, and it will just be more difficult to get over those mountains than it would be to just have like a nice, slightly bumpy road, but mainly straight. So it is better to avoid having sparse studying of subjects and having a consistency of like 2 or 3 times a week you review that same exact material, just again, to keep it nice and fresh in your mind, just to keep things easier for the long run. Number 2 is active recall. This was such a light bulb moment for me when I realized that that's how the brain memory works, and it was just life-changing when I realized like active recall is so important. So let's get into that. Active recall is when you challenge your brain to remember the information that you need. And this is crucial to memorization and overall long-term memory and retention of information. This is when I noticed that many people, including myself, were using flashcards wrong. Well, okay, technically there is no wrong way to be using a tool, but scientifically it is more effective to be using it in the way that I will mention. So basically, to initiate active recall when using flashcard, instead of just like stating information, for example, Fumetto, and then on the other side it would just be like painting technique of the Renaissance, it would just be a lot more effective to pose it as a question instead. So what is Sfumetto? Have like a notebook on the side and then write down your answer and then compare it with the answer on the back of the card, because it just initiates that active side of your brain of like, oh, I need to answer this question. It's not just like glazing over the information and being like, oh yeah, okay, that. So overall, it is just better to pose it as a question in order to activate and initiate that part of your brain. It's just a lot more interactive for your memory, and you're less likely to just glaze over the information like a robot. Trust me, we've all done it. We've all done it, myself included. It's really important to initiate that active recall because your brain actively tries to remember that information, and instead of just like, You know when you just glaze over a couple paragraphs in a reading? We're trying to avoid that as much as possible. Number 2, the second A, is association. Basically, you want to create connections between information in order to have a easier time like initiating connections of responses in order to retain that information as a whole. So for example, let's go back to that art history technique. Sumato, what is it? It's a painting technique that was done in the Renaissance. Okay, what painting uses that technique? Oh, the Mona Lisa. Oh, who created the Mona Lisa? Leonardo da Vinci. So already there, we've connected Sumato and Leonardo da Vinci through all of that information that is now in your brain, and then you're like, oh, all of this is connected, and then you can use that depending on what type of information you need for whatever question or whatever. So just having that association just really works really, really well in order to create the information, or in order to connect the information that you have been learning together as a whole. Another way to do associations is creating your own abbreviations. This has been very, very helpful in terms of science classes for me. So in my anatomy biology class, we used to have this trick in order to remember the 12 cranial nerves, and the sentence goes, on occasion, our trusty truck acts funny. Very good vehicle anyhow. Every single first letter of all of those words is the first letter of the 12 cranial nerves in order. So in order to just even if you don't exactly remember exactly the name of each cranial nerve, you at least have that hint within that association of the sentence. So that helps a lot in just remembering certain things like that. So again, for the spine, for the thoracic cage, cranial, thoracic, lumbar, and stuff like that, you would just have all those letters in order of 4 or 5 letters. And you would just remember that acronym and be like, okay, what does each one represent again? So it's just, again, creating those little associations in order to initiate that active recall to remember that information. And finally, the last letter of the SAD study technique, desirable difficulty. When Jade mentioned this in her book, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Because I've realized that I am a little bit of more of the lazy type of studier. I always go for the lazy, easy way, and I didn't even realize I was doing this, and I didn't realize that it was impacting the quality of my studying. For studying to be effective, it needs to have a challenge. Let's compare this to working out at the gym. If you keep the same routine over and over again and you do it 3 times a week, within a while, your body's going to get used to it and then just stop making progress, because that's just the norm that your body is used to. You will be reaching a state of neutrality. Memory is like a muscle as well. It works the exact same way. To better improve it and to have a better time memorizing and holding better information, it needs to have that challenge. You need to change your study techniques from time to time to keep it different, to have those different challenges and stuff like that. So instead of just doing flashcards all the time, change it to just a brain dump page instead. Create your own little mini self-tests of little questions that you can think of, and constantly switch those questions out, and also try applying that information to a real life scenario or just anything like that. Just change it up a bit to add that extra challenge. Again, to initiate the active recall, to remember the information, but also to keep that challenge in order to make that muscle work and just really challenge your brain to remembering things. This is crucial to memory, information retention, and just, quality of studying in general, as I've said. Because once you're comfortable with the basics, you need to start being able to add in those extra little bits of details in between those basics in order to, again, enlarge the whole that you know. So overall, the SAD study technique is just crucial to better understanding how our brains work in terms of memory and studying. And it was just really something that I wanted to share, because I was like, that makes so much sense to why my studying has not been as effective as it should be and as it was in the past. So I hope this was able to shed some light on something that you realize that you do that could be improved. And overall, this entire technique just says, study smarter, not harder. And I think that is such a good way to look at it. Now, my second personal tip is to use the guiding questions / learning goal outcomes that are provided by your professors. My university does this. I don't know about other universities, and it may not apply to you, but usually there are guiding questions or like guiding learning outcomes in the syllabus or given per module / chapter, whatever term your university uses. And those really just help you get a base of like where you should be at in terms of the knowledge that you should retain from each section. So I really often use these questions as guides for my studying for my quizzes, because there are like quizzes for every single module. And then I look at the questions of like, okay, this question, there's about like 5 questions per module. And it's a really good point to start studying. It is a good starter point because I feel like a lot of students get lost of like where we should be starting when it comes to these type of things, and it's just, we get lost really easily in all of the information, and it's just like, okay, well, do I just do like a brain dump and just memorize every single thing of the entire chapter? Like what concepts should I be conscious of and really understand? So I feel like these questions really provide like a perfect outline of where you should be at in terms of your knowledge of the module. And what I usually do is that I start off with these questions and I try to answer them as much as I can from just pure memory of what I remember. This is usually a really humbling experience, but also a really good indicator of where I stand in terms of understanding the material that I have learned and just really where I stand. And then after that I do the memory part, I go through the material in order to add the extra details that were important to the questions in order to really complete the entire studying. So yeah, overall, I just think that it's a really good starting point for students that feel like a little bit lost of like where they should be starting to study for their quizzes and stuff like that, because again, there's a lot of information, we don't know what direction we should be going, and this is a great tool for people to start off with and understand these are the expectations that my professor has of me, and it's just a great way to start things. And then finally, my third tip, which I have also made a video about in the past a little bit, but this time we're gonna look at it a bit differently, is just learning to condense your information without losing too much of the crucial important parts. Now, that seems like a lot. It seems impossible, but trust me, I will show you how I do it, and it has yet to fail me. So my first trick when it comes to this is actually the video that I made in the past, which I will link in the description down below. It is a video that I made about how to take better notes. So it's really, I had made a video about like how to better condense your notes and how to do just better note taking in general. So just to sum it up a little bit, instead of writing full sentences, keep it to dot jots. Keep it to the crucial points. Not like, you know, Mr. Wellington was born in 1953 and lived in a luscious home in the southeastern area of London. Condense that to Sir Wellington, 1954, southeastern London. You know, just keep it to the main bullet points. That will be just much more efficient for your overall time-consuming things, and just like, you know, straight to the point without any fluff. So again, I will link that video down below. It has some good tips about color coding and how to organize notes better, and I use these techniques all the time, and they have been lifesavers, honestly, in just like, again, time commitments to taking notes and things like that. But the new one that I've been doing recently has been connected to readings specifically. So as students, I think we can all say readings suck. They take forever. Every professor gives at least like 100 pages to read per week, at least in my program. I'm in history. So there's a lot of reading happening, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of just fluff, and just, it's a lot. It's a lot. I have no motivation when it comes to readings, and it's just too much. It's overwhelming, but it has a lot of crucial information that you need for the course. So here's how I make it easier. I always start off by reading the introductions of the readings and the conclusions separately. So I fully read the introduction and I fully read the conclusion. So first and last paragraphs. But then for the in-between parts, I only read the first sentence of every paragraph. Now, in academic papers, academic writing is, you know, hard to digest sometimes. It's very fanciful and it's too much. It's too much in my opinion. It's a lot. So for efficiency, technically, when you write an academic paper, the first sentence of your paragraph should introduce what idea will be covered inside that paragraph. So why don't we just read the first sentence, understand what the paragraph is about, and make notes about it, you know? I figured that out the other day and I was like, that is just so much more efficient. So I've been doing that and it's been working great. So again, read the first paragraph, read the last paragraph, get an idea what the paper is about just from the introduction and conclusion, and then go in and just read the first sentence of every single paragraph. Now, if ever there is a concept that you don't really understand that is kind of mentioned, you can then go back to that first sentence of the paragraph and then read through the paragraph if you need some more context. And then overall, I just take notes solely on the introduction, on the conclusion, and then those first sentences. And it just helps me get like a better overview of the entire reading itself without having to read the full 20 pages. I can condense it to maybe 1 or 2 pages of notes instead. So it's just a lot like less time consuming, and it's still just as efficient. And as I've said before, this has yet to fail me. I've saved so much time by doing that technique, and I honestly really recommend it. I think that it works really well. And again, using that first sentence just allows you you can basically just write up a quick summary of the entire like 20 to 30 page reading within half an hour, instead of doing like 3 hours of taking notes for like every single line, every sentence of the entire page. So overall, this last technique is about learning how to take calculated risks. Learn to cut the corners, but cut the corners smoothly, don't leave them jagged. So to sum up my 3 main tips that we've covered so far, number 1, use tools correctly to make your studies more efficient and more effective. Number 2 was use the guiding questions to help narrow down your studying and to make it more effective and line up with what the professor is expecting of you. Then number 3 was learn to condense your information and studies without losing too much of the crucial information. So these have been very helpful to me throughout my post-secondary studies, and I just really wish I knew of these earlier because I would have saved myself a lot of time and late nights. But I hope by making this video and sharing them with you that they are helpful in a way. Obviously, not all these techniques will work for everybody, and that is okay. Every individual is different, and of course it depends on your program. Like if you're more into like the heavy math sciences, these might not necessarily apply to you, but as a person who is studying in art and in history, they're very crucial and have been very helpful. But before we part, I do have a little gift for you. In the description, there will be a link to a Google Drive link, and inside of that link, I have made some study sheets for you. I use these personally actually very often. I use them every time I have a quiz and I need to summarize a module. These have been a great way to just condense my information into 1 page, and then it's very useful for finals because then for every module you already have the condensed information that you need, and it's just all there instead of having like a bunch of messy notes from throughout the entire semester, you know? So obviously, again, these will not work for everybody, but I do find them very useful, and it's just an easy way to start studying instead of just staring like at a blank page, not knowing how to organize yourself. So if these work for you, great. I'm so happy that they do, and I hope that they're helpful, and I hope you enjoy them. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching it all the way to the end. I hope these tricks were genuinely helpful in any way. If you have any other tips that you would like to share with me or anybody else, the comments are always open to suggestions and other techniques. I would love to know. And if you have any modifications that you do to these techniques that I've mentioned, feel free to share them as well. Maybe they'll work for someone else, and maybe they might even improve mine as well. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all very soon. Bye guys.